My name's Paul Owen, I'm an architect and I work for the Brisbane architectural practice Owen and Vokes and Peters. For me, I think the coolest people are ones who think for themselves, that don't do things or think things based on what is the assumed conventional wisdom. And so for people to do that often requires them to be a bit brave. So here at the Queensland Museum, there's work in for photographing insects to an extremely high resolution, which reveals sort of a beauty in these insects that isn't normally seen. But there's this extra layer that I find really interesting, and that is that the work of the entomologist is very much what might be seen as boring field research and process-driven work back in the museum and in the laboratory. Things like labelling, cataloguing, very much process-driven stuff. So I'm really interested in the idea that these normal, everyday working tasks actually lead to to quite special results. A couple of years ago, I gave a talk in Sydney where I was asked to talk about the work of our practice. And I love making analogies to explain things, and I use the analogy of the pinned bugs and butterflies, which represents the work of the entomologist. And so the message in my talk was that to someone visiting a museum and seeing these, quite beautiful insects pinned on a board isn't necessarily a true representation of the work of the entomologist. That behind all of that is a lot of seemingly mundane, seemingly menial, everyday tasks, but they're all important in sort of achieving results in that field. And that in fact, that's how we saw the work of our practice, that we're architects going out into the field, collecting observations about the city that we live in, and that's what informed our work, which leads to this further idea that quite special and beautiful things can and quite possibly should come out of ordinary things. So there's this duality between the ordinary and the beautiful. I think I'd define cool by something that actually at first might seem quite uncool. So things that resonate because of being authentic or being genuine. Sort of objects that appeal to me are objects that have a true need and use, and they respond to that use, and that their decoration, if there is any, is actually embodied in its practicality and its pared back kind of aesthetic. When I think about a museum, like most people, I probably think about an old-fashioned museum where there's stuff laid out everywhere and you're really just exploring things without necessarily needing to be taught something directly, but you could maybe learn yourself by just making your own observations. I think there's a good movement towards supporting things that are genuine and that are authentic, and just doing it simply and doing it well, which is kind of an old-fashioned idea, but I think it's something that's very much shaping positive things about what's happening now and what might happen in the future.